Main event now, where we got featherweights throwing down as former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling looks to halt the run of Yusuf Zalal. You got plus 140 on Sterling and minus 160 on Zalal. Now, starting off on the Sterling side of things, he went up to featherweight after he lost his title by knockout to Sugar Sean O'Malley for two reasons. One, the cuts were not getting easier to 135 pounds. He's 36 years old, probably. I believe he was 35 when he made the change. But also to give his close friend and training partner, Merab Dvalishvili, the opportunity to fight for the title. And we saw how that worked out. Dvalishvili got the title, defended it, ended up losing it to Petr Yan, but still, at least Dvalishvili got to achieve his dream of becoming a UFC champion. Sterling made his featherweight debut against Calvin Kattar, where he was able to just go out there and smother Kattar at UFC 300, easily winning that on the scorecards. He had a hot start against Movsar Evloev, but was unable to keep that going in the second and third rounds. He ended up losing that fight on the scorecards. And then there was that very weird 5-round fight that he had against Brian Ortega, which I believe ended up taking place at a 150-pound catch weight. Might have even been 155, but regardless, if you guys remember, Ortega was hospitalized due to his weight cut, yet they still managed to get him onto the scale. He looked very compromised, and it was clear he was even more compromised in the fight. Sterling took a very cautious approach, picking Ortega apart, staying busier in the striking round for the first 3 rounds, and then in the 4th and 5th round, we saw him get to his grappling and outwork Ortega en route to a decision win. I don't really count that fight. You know what I mean? I don't count it in the aspect that it seemed more like a sparring match. It almost seemed like Sterling didn't want to hurt Ortega because of all the health issues that Ortega had going into that fight. So it was just not a good look all around. We know what Sterling looks like at his best. A lot of flashy kicks, but it's all about getting to his grappling game, finding the back of his opponents, either sinking in the choke or just becoming the human backpack, as he claims himself. But he's getting up there in age. He's 36 years old. It's going to get harder and harder for him to implement that against guys that have developed their grappling games enough where they can keep him away from actually getting to those positions to really grind those spots out. His gas tank has always been a bit of a question mark, especially in fights where he's unable to establish his dominant grappling, where he can't dictate the pace, and that's where opponents have been able to work him down and cause him issues later on in matchups. Now, here against Yusuf Zalal, Zalal, crazy turnaround in this kid's career. He went 3-3-1 in his initial run with the UFC, ending his run with the UFC 0-3-1. I believe the last one was a draw against Damon Blackshear. Then he went to the regional scene, racked up 3 first-round finishes from November 2022 to August of 2023. Then he got a short notice return to the UFC against Billy Q in March of 2024, and he's never looked back since. He's won 8 straight fights, 5 of those in the UFC, and he's finished all but one of those fights, which was that tepid pace striking approach that he took against Calvin Kattar. But luckily he bounced back. Well, not bounced back, but he made up for that poor victory by quickly submitting Josh Emmett in his next matchup. That was a fight where he was able to surprise Emmett with a takedown and then eventually work to an armbar where he got the tap from the veteran. Zalal was originally known for being a Muay Thai specialist, good striking, good kicks, good combinations, but he's very much worked on his wrestling and grappling here, so much so that he's been able to submit, 4 of those 5 wins that he's had in the UFC, and pretty good grapplers as well, right? Billy Quarantillo, Jack Shore, those guys are some pretty good grapplers, and Zalal pretty much made it look easy against those guys. His confidence is at an all-time high, right? He's fighting this weekend in his first UFC main event against a former champion, knowing that if he can go out there and secure a win, he puts himself amongst the title talks, or at least the title challengers in the featherweight division. Zalal is very talented. Again, confidence sky high right now, and I think this is a great matchup for him to try to go out there and get the biggest win of his career thus far. Now, when I first studied this matchup, Zalal was minus 140. So there has been love coming in on Zalal over the last 48 to 72 hours. And I think for good reason, right? I'm expecting as we get closer to fight time, there might be love that comes back in on Sterling, but I believe you have to read into the grappling improvements of Zalal to believe that he should be able to stop most of Sterling's advances. I think we'll see him stay very cognizant of whenever Sterling tries to get into the clinch, because Sterling normally does a good job in terms of getting to the back of his opponents and then sinking in his chokes. But if Zalal can disengage from those clinch positions and then really pick Sterling apart in the grappling realm, I think we can see Zalal start running away in this matchup, especially with his his striking edge in this fight. I also think Zalal has a better gas tank. So it's possible that Sterling could rack up maybe a round or two of control time. Maybe he catches Zalal slipping, and that's where we see him get the backpack going. But I think Zalal has good enough submission defense to not get finished. And then I think as we get into deeper water, Zalal will stay squirmy enough to keep Sterling away from getting those large amounts of times of control. And I think that will lead to Zalal chipping away at Sterling and winning this fight on the scorecards. I don't think it's going to be all that exciting. I think Zalal knows what's tied to this matchup. He needs to get a win here to establish himself amongst the top 10 of the featherweight division, and that puts him one step closer to potentially fighting for the featherweight title. So I don't think he's going to be looking to make many mistakes here. Unless he senses Sterling slowing down significantly late, I think we'll see Zalal pretty much take the approach that he took in the Calvin Kattar fight, and I think he outpoints Sterling en route to a decision victory.